Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Around the Diocese. This is a program that shares the many ministries and programs available to everyone in Middle Tennessee, from local parishes, the Diocese of Nashville, as well as international programs from the Catholic Church. My name is Ron Flietz, and I'm blessed to be your host. Today, we welcome Deacon Marty Deschenes of St. Henry Parish. Marty has been with the Cursillo movement in our diocese for years and has made Cursillo so real for thousands of us over all those years. Marty, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, and thanks for having me.
We're delighted to have you. You are such a... If you've not met Marty, you have to realize the fact this man is just full of excitement, and he really makes the Cursillo movement pop out to all of us and such. And today we are going to talk about the Cursillo movement, where it started, how it's doing, what all it's doing here in Tennessee, and literally how you can get involved too. Because if you haven't been through Cursillo, you really, really need to pray about that and plan to attend one in the future. So, Marty, give us a little bit of history.
Well, let me start way back in the 1940s.
That is way back.
The Cursillo, by the way, which is called Cursillo de Cristiandad, which means little course in Christianity, and that's all it is a little course in Christianity, but it continues on throughout your life. Well, that started in the 1940s when people in Spain, especially the men, were unhappy with what was going on in the Catholic Church over there, and so they decided they had to get involved. And so it really started with men, and then women came into it after. And so in the late 1940s, they went on a pilgrimage to St. James of Compostela. And that's where they started together, meeting together and having little group meetings together. And then put on what we call the Cursillo weekend now for the first time. And it grew from there to all the countries in the world, actually. And it came to the United States in 1957 in Waco, Texas. It was brought here by two soldiers who had been in Spain, two American soldiers that were in Spain, and they brought it here. And it started in Waco, Texas, and I think the first one was a Spanish Cursillo. And then it grew with that and to English Cursillos, and now we have Vietnamese Cursillos over here, and we have several languages also, and all over the world. And now in Nashville or in Tennessee, because at the time in Tennessee it was one diocese in Tennessee. The whole Memphis and Knoxville were with Nashville as the diocese. And so the first one was in Memphis in 1964. In 1967, someone talked about Cursillo in Nashville to Father Giacosa. It was actually Mike Figlio, And Father Giacosa said, we're not interested in that. I'm not sure about that, And then all of a sudden, they kept insisting. So Father Giacosa, let's go to Memphis and get in on their Cursillo weekend, do the Cursillo weekend there. So they got 5 men from St. Henry, 1 man from Cathedral, and they all went down to Memphis to make the first Cursillo. That was in October. They were so excited. They invited the team that put on the Cursillo in Memphis to come to Nashville the next month. And they got the first men's Cursillo the next month.
So they used the same team then from Memphis?
Yes, the same team. And there were men from several parishes in Nashville that made Cursillo. That was the first one in Nashville. That was number 14 in the diocese, but that was the first one in Nashville. And that's where we start counting them for us in Nashville, number 14 on. And in the meantime, a few of them were done in Knoxville and a few in Chattanooga also. But most of them were done in Nashville after that. And when the dioceses came together, were separated, 3 dioceses, 2 at first, and then 3.
Right.
Well, then Nashville has its own Cursillo.
Okay, so like for instance, number 14 is where all of them started here in Nashville.
Right.
Okay, because I know like I went to number 77.
Yeah.
And that was in 2000, and we're talking in what, 68?
68. Now we're in. I think it's 114 or something like that for
Oh,
the
that's
men's.
fantastic.
Now that's just the men's.
Mm-hmm.
There's the women's also, and the women's are up to 97, I think now. So,
Wow, they're catching up.
oh yeah. At first, it was the men that made Cursillo mostly. They wanted the men to change their life, because we needed more than the women.
Right. Yeah, a lot to be said about that.
Yeah, and then the women came, and for a long time, the women couldn't make it unless the men made it. Their husbands made it,
Right.
So that changed after a while, about maybe 20 years ago. So
Okay. Yeah.
So now women can make it even if the man doesn't make it or anything like that. But Ron, you said it has changed so many lives, It changed my life. Can I tell you a little bit how
Absolutely.
I got involved?
Please do.
Okay. I think it was 1970. There's a guy from a professor from TSU where I was teaching also, John Millett,
Okay.
who, by the way, became a deacon later, and I followed in his footsteps.
Oh, that's
but
cool.
He had made Cursillo, and he would come to me every day and say, Marty, you've got to make this Cursillo thing. You'll see it will change your life. And he wouldn't stop every day for 4 years.
Wow.
I resisted for 4 years, I wasn't ready. The Lord gets you to do that when you're ready. 4 years later, I made Cursillo, and I had to dump a lot of stuff out of my life. I just felt so, and I was angry at first. I was listening to the talks, and I said, no, I don't want to change, and all that, the talks.
Now, this is on your weekend?
Yeah, on my weekend.
Okay.
I was angry at the speakers that were talking, telling their life story, and telling me what I should do, how I should change my life. And then on Saturday afternoon, I just broke down, and I started crying. And I went to confession that evening, and I hadn't been to confession for about 10 years, And it was like something lifted off my shoulders, changed my whole life. Here I am, many, many years later, still involved in Cursillo and going strong with it, too. So.
Well, you're such an anchor of the Cursillo program. Sharing with you all, my wife and I had the pleasure of going to Cursillo in 2000, right after we moved to Nashville, because good friends of ours from several parishes before said, on our farewell party, they said, you got to go to Cursillo. Just find a parish that's going to have Cursillo. And it was a couple years later when we landed here in Middle Tennessee at St. Stephen's, and son of a gun, we went to Cursillo, and it changed our lives. Yeah. And it is just an immeasurable, beautiful journey to go through it. Can you share a little bit about the weekend?
Yes. One of the things that happened in the past is people didn't talk to other people very much about the weekend itself. And it was like secretive,
Right.
And that hurt the Cursillo movement in a sense, because a lot of people didn't want to come because of that, But now we share the details of the weekend as much as we can, except we don't divulge the stories that are told there by the people. It's very, you got to be careful about
exactly.
that. So, but the weekend itself starts on Thursday evening and ends on Sunday evening. And you stay overnight. You have a sponsor normally, and yet the sponsor brings you there and leaves you there without a car.
Right. Yeah, I do remember that.
And you sleep in quarters that are with other people, not right now it's like 4 people in the same room or something, but it's kind of safe, and everything. So, and then every day you have 5 talks. 3 by lay people and 2 by clergy. And you also have meditations in the morning. You have Mass and communion. And most of all, you have confessions 2 nights in a row if you want to go to confession. And I tell you, Ron, you know that too probably. Those confessions are powerful, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
I hear the guys, as a spiritual advisor, I hear guys come to me and tell me, crying sometimes, how that confession changed also their life, you know. And then we keep on after going to confession and everything. But the talks are given, they're a little long sometimes, but they're good, you know, half an hour sometimes. And people share their lives, how, not just how they came to Cursillo, but their lives, period, sometimes, you know. And some of it is theory, and some of them is
actual.
Practical stuff, you know, so.
Yeah, I know in regards to confession, I'm a convert. And converted, I guess, when I was 28 or 29 years old to the Catholic faith, and it was the best thing I ever did in my life. Yeah. But I fought confession for years, and you know, occasionally still do. but there on my Cursillo weekend, it was very profound, you know, and it was the first time I felt that I wanted to go. I knew I needed to go, but then in the environment that Cursillo offered, it just warmed my heart, and it said, Ron, you got to go. Yeah. You want to go now. Yeah. And I do confirm that. It was a beautiful time.
And you know what's good about it too, what's great about it is that after the Cursillo was over, you remember that, and you want to go to confession again. You know God forgives you no matter what, you know. No matter what you have done, God forgives you. So you keep going to confession, and that brings me to what happens after Cursillo. Is that okay?
Absolutely. No,
a little bit.
By all means.
After Cursillo, you know, it's not like any other retreat where you have a retreat, it's over, you're on a high for about a month, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in the same place that you were before. That happens a lot. It happened a lot to me. I had made retreats before like that, you know.
Right.
And it didn't change very much in my life. But this, you have tools that you can use to keep going after. It doesn't stop there. That's just the beginning, the weekend. You have a group that you can meet with of men alone and women alone. By the way, we have them separate. You know why?
Right.
Because the stories that are told wouldn't be told necessarily in front of women that men tell, and vice versa, you know. So people, you know, so that confidentiality is so important. So the small groups that meet weekly, just about, and wherever they want. Some meet in restaurants, some meet in church, some meet at different places, you know, in homes or something. And then also you have what we call an ultrea, which is people coming together at the cathedral right now, but we did it in different parishes, and different parishes also have their own little ultrea, where people from different parishes come together. And then we have an hour group meeting, and we share our piety, our prayer life, our study, the things we studied during the week that not necessarily come from books, but from life itself sometimes, and then our action, what we have done or tried to do and we're not so good at doing. But every week you do that, and you keep coming back, and you keep coming back. And after a while it becomes part of your life, you know. So that's the follow-up.
And I agree with you. You know, we had been on retreats before. Back in Ohio when we lived there, there was a program called Christ Renews His Parish. And it was a weekend retreat. And once again, it was all men or all women. And you went on the retreat, and it was very, very warm. It was welcoming. You felt great after the retreat. Well, on Monday morning, I went back to work too, and at the end of the next week, you know, my high is somewhat gone, and the next weekend we're going to mass, okay, but I felt a void after that, and being a Cursillistas myself, you know, since 2000, you know, I've been in a group, and every week we affirm each other. Wow. we follow the guidelines, of what Cursillo set out for us as far as our group. Plus, we get in all the practical stuff, what's really going on in your life this week. And we've had additions, of new people who've joined, and some have gone maybe to another group over the course of time. But every week, we still meet, and in our instance, we would go to Mass and then group afterwards, with all of us together. Our parish is not having a Saturday Mass now, so we go and to the prayer garden, do the rosary, and then we continue with our group. So there's so many different ways of doing it.
Yeah. Hey, and also, our Cursillo in the Catholic Church is for Catholics, because we don't want people coming in and maybe not agreeing with what we're saying and all that, and the Catholic faith and all that. So we keep it for Catholics. But guess what? Other denominations have started their own Cursillos. And in Nashville here, myself and a few other people helped them start it over here. The Walk to Emmaus is for the Methodist Cursillo, but they allow anybody to come in. And two of us were on that weekend, on the first weekend that they made, and we gave talks to other denominations. Of course, their sacraments talk is a little shorter than ours,
Right.
But then we also started to help them start the Tres Dias, which is the Baptist one, I have a story to tell you on that. Okay?
Please do.
The Baptist one. This was the Walk to Emmaus that I was on the team, and I was given a talk.
That had to be so rewarding.
Yeah, I know. And I was at a table, and there was a guy next to me sitting at that table. And at the beginning of the retreat, we're introduced as people who are going to give the talk. Over there they do that. So in the morning, that first day, Friday, we give all the talks. At the end of the last talk in the morning, this guy gets up and he says, I have a confession to make. He says, I'm Baptist, and my mother always told me that Catholics were the devil. And when I knew that this guy next to me was going to be here all weekend next to me, I got very angry. But he says, now, for the first time in my life, I have a Catholic friend.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh, that's,
I got goosebumps, Marty.
I know. And what happened after that is, we used to meet sometimes at Dalt's or a restaurant after the Altrea.
Sure.
And we were there, a bunch of Catholic guys meeting. We're coming out of there, and across at another little restaurant, there's someone coming out. And they see, we have a little badge that we use, we put on to show that we're Cursillistas. It's actually a rooster, it looks like.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And so the guys see that on us, and they said, de colores, and that means of colors,
Right.
And that's a sort of a saying that we have to know
absolutely,
that we're Cursillistas. And we said, what, you made Cursillo? You guys are Cursillistas? Yeah. They said, we did the Walk to Emmaus, the Protestant one.
Isn't that
And
neat?
right away we had that connection, It was beautiful, so.
Well, Christ is the prize.
Exactly. Yeah.
And, that's just fantastic.
Yeah.
So, you've been doing, and literally, you're the religious leader of the Cursillo.
The spiritual advisor.
Spiritual advisor.
Yeah.
Okay. And then another person is running the Cursillo, correct?
Yes, a lay
person.
A rector. We call him a rector, the rector. Yeah.
But, for some reason, I thought you were really running it because you...
Well, there's the lay director for the whole diocese, and then there's a rector for each weekend, a man and a woman. But the spiritual advisor is always there, it has to be. And actually, that's the continuity, because the rector and lay director, that changes all the time, so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Tell you a couple more stories?
Oh, please do.
It's so great.
It's just so exciting having you here, Marty.
One time we had a tornado that hit during the Cursillo, a women's Cursillo. That was at Camp Marymount.
Okay.
And we were all it was late afternoon, and we were right in the middle of a talk. And someone comes in and says, there's a tornado coming. We have to go down in the cellar, in the basement. So I said, come on, ladies, we all go down, and we go down there. And the ladies are afraid. They're crying down there. I says, okay, let's say a rosary. We started the rosary. Everybody calmed down. And guess what the tornado did? It was coming right straight for us. It went right around us on both sides.
Oh, wow.
Said.
More goosebumps.
Another time, remember when they had the fire at Camp Marymount?
Yes, I do.
Well, we still had the Cursillo. It was just a couple of weeks before the Cursillo weekend. And so it destroyed the part where we were going to have the Cursillo, or it made it impossible to have the Cursillo in there. So we put up a tent. They put up a tent. That's where we ate, outside in the tent. And we had all our meetings in the chapel instead, and we had a great Cursillo weekend just the same. The only problem is when we were in the tent eating, a big storm hit, rain coming down, and everything was going
everything's flapping.
all over the place. But we still continue having the weekend. Everybody remembers that weekend. It was a great weekend.
The Lord just made it a little bit more rememberable.
Exactly.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Another story. Okay?
Sure.
There's a lady that made the weekend. This used to be, we made the weekends at Mary Queen of Angels and St. Henry. St. Henry was the first weekend, by the way, in the school. And at first we were in schools. I made mine in Holy Name in a classroom. We had beds next to each other. And that's what it was. But anyway,
I know there was some down at the cathedral too, weren't there? Yeah.
Cathedral. We used to have to bring our mattresses in at cathedral and put them on the floor, and everything.
Yeah.
Mattresses in and set up for everything. So, but this one I was telling, the story is at the cathedral, because we were on the third floor. So there was a lady that was really having problems, So I saw her. She was sitting in on the fire escape outside, on the third floor, outside the third floor. So I went to sat down with her. And it was 2:00 in the morning. She was tired, I was tired, and she was just crying. And she started talking to me, and I didn't hear a word she said. All I'd say is, and all that. And I don't remember. I didn't remember. I was too tired.
Right.
Well, a few years later, I was in St. Mary's bookstore. And this lady was up on the balcony in St. Mary's.
I know what you're talking about.
She says, Marty, she says, she says, I made Cursillo a while ago, and you talked to me that night and helped me a lot. I didn't talk to her at all. I just listened to her. And there I understood the power of listening to people, just listening. That's all they want, And that's what I try to tell people in Cursillo all the time. Listen, just listen. You can't solve problems. You can't fix things, but you sure can help by just listening to people, So.
Yeah, what a story that is, too, Marty.
And I could tell you, I have stories, so many that people's lives have changed. Now, my life hasn't changed physically, but what has changed is my attitude toward life, my awareness. I know that now God is right here all the time. It's my decision to reach out to him or not to, but I know he's there. And that's so great to know, to be aware.
Oh, absolutely. I remember one of the most important things towards the end of the Cursillo that I was on, I'm sure it's for everybody, you hand people a cross, and Christ is counting on you.
Here it is.
Yep.
A crucifix that I keep with me all the time, and that I give to people, by the way, that lost theirs, and then I get some more, But it's a crucifix. By the way, you probably heard me tell that story. My Cursillo crucifix is in my dad's pocket in his casket.
Really?
Yeah, I just put.
I
it
did
there.
not hear that.
Yeah,
no.
no, maybe you didn't. Yeah, so my original crucifix, is there. So.
Oh my gosh! Now, Marty, are they still having Cursillos twice a year? I know it's been challenging because of the pandemic.
Yeah, right now we're on a hold. We're on a hold, and we're not sure yet for the fall. I'm pretty sure we'll have it in spring. But the other thing is the Spanish Cursillo. We didn't talk about that, but we started the Spanish Cursillo here also. And
Great. I was not aware of that.
They already had 8 men's and 8 women's. By the way, I forgot to say this. There are at least 6,000 people who made Cursillo in Nashville. At least
I believe
6,000.
it. I believe it.
And now another 400 or 500 Spanish people who made it, you know. So this, and what's neat is the Spanish people are going to help the people in Kentucky to start their own over there.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, now speaking of being able to attend Cursillo, what can someone who's listening do to sign up for one in the future, or at least be able to sign up so I can get information when the next one comes along?
There's a website.
Okay.
Cursillo.org.
Okay.
NashvilleCursillo.org. You can sign up on a website and everything, okay? We've already got 10 people signed up for next time, 10 men and 7 or 8 women. And they usually, there's usually about anywhere from 20 to 35 candidates, you know,
right,
that come to the Cursillo weekend. Spanish, they get 40 sometimes. You know?
Oh, that's great. Now, keep in mind, folks, it's Nashville Cursillo, which is spelled CURSILLO.org. Okay. Well, that's great. Marty, it has just been an extreme pleasure seeing you again. This gentleman meant so much to me on my weekend, and I know to my wife on her weekend as well. We can't thank you enough for all that you've given to the Cursillo movement.
Well, thank you, and thank God.
Yeah, amen to that. It has just been a total pleasure, and seeing you again, and you sharing all this great information with all the folks out here in Nashville Catholic Radio land.
Okay, and love you all, people.
And he does. He means it, too. Both Marty and I thank you very much for sharing your precious time with us. We know you could be spending it someplace else, but thank God you're listening to us today. Around the Diocese is made possible through the generous donations of our listeners and sponsors and the Diocese of Nashville. Shining the light of our Catholic faith in everyday life, this is Nashville Catholic Radio, 100.5 FM, and streaming at nashvillecr.com.